She said she was weak. I said she broke the strongest part of me. The story opens with a quiet, seemingly ordinary setting, a sun-drenched cafe tucked into a tree-lined street, the kind of place where the aroma of fresh coffee hangs in the air, mingling with the subtle scent of pastries. Our male narrator, 26, is alone at a corner table, notebook open, pen hovering over blank pages, struggling to capture thoughts that feel just out of reach. His inner world is restless, searching for meaning in the hum of city life. Then she enters. She is 42, composed yet effortless in her elegance. There's a quiet gravity to her presence, the kind that makes people notice without trying. Her hair catches the light in warm, chestnut streaks, and the subtle sway of her steps is a rhythm of calm confidence. She pauses to glance at the display of books, a soft smile tugging at the corners of her lips as if sharing a secret with the world. Their eyes meet, and in that fleeting moment, the narrator feels it, the unusual weight of recognition, though they have never met. Her gaze is steady but curious, observing him as though measuring the space he occupies. There's no overt flirtation, yet the air between them feels charged, taut with the possibility of connection. She reaches for a book at the same time he does. Their hands brush, a brief, accidental contact that sends an unexpected warmth up his arm. It's a small, silent shock, but it lingers. He notices the softness of her skin, the gentle firmness of her fingers. She withdraws her hand with a polite, almost apologetic smile, but the tension doesn't dissipate. It settles comfortably in the space between them, like an unfinished sentence waiting to be spoken. The narrator's mind races, cataloging every detail, the faint scent of her perfume, warm and slightly floral, the quiet confidence in her posture, the way she pauses to consider the book, deliberate and thoughtful. He feels drawn to her, an inexplicable pull that both excites and unnerves him. She finally speaks, a soft, melodic voice that cuts through the ambient cafe noise. A casual remark about the book, yet it resonates more deeply than words should. He responds, and their conversation begins to unfold in careful, tentative exchanges. There's laughter, subtle and restrained, and moments of silence that feel unusually intimate, almost like shared secrets. As she moves to the counter to place her order, he notices a lingering trace of her presence, the faint warmth left behind, the soft rustle of her coat. Even after she leaves, the memory of her smile and the brush of her hand stays with him, tugging at thoughts he hadn't anticipated. By the end of this encounter, the audience should feel the magnetic tension, two strangers, bound by a quiet, almost electric awareness of each other, standing at the threshold of something neither fully understands yet. This is the beginning of a slow, deliberate journey, a dance of proximity, hesitation, and growing curiosity. After that first unexpected encounter, the narrator finds himself noticing her in ways that surprise him. He doesn't know her name yet, but he remembers the curve of her smile, the subtle warmth of her presence, and the way her eyes seemed to hold quiet understanding. Days later, fate, or perhaps circumstance, brings them together again. This time, the meeting is in a shared context, a mutual friend's small gathering, a bookstore event, or perhaps a quiet corner of a gallery. The initial recognition is electric but softened by the awareness of social expectations. They approach each other with polite nods, careful smiles, yet both are acutely aware of the subtle tension thrumming beneath the surface. Conversation begins slowly, hesitant, as if testing the waters of familiarity. They talk about trivial things at first, books, art, or the weather, but each word carries the weight of curiosity, the unspoken desire to know more. Physical proximity grows almost by accident. In a crowded room, he finds himself standing close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her. Her hand lightly brushes his as she reaches for a glass, and he catches himself noticing the smoothness of her skin, the faint pulse at her wrist. Neither pulls away immediately, and the moment lingers, charged with silent acknowledgement. Their dialogue carries pauses, pregnant with meaning. He notices how she tilts her head slightly when she listens, the way her eyes linger just a fraction too long, conveying interest without intention to expose vulnerability. She, in turn, notices the subtle attentiveness in his gaze, the way his posture shifts unconsciously toward her when she speaks. Each interaction is a dance of restraint and unspoken connection. Internally, both wrestle with hesitation. He is drawn to her warmth and wisdom, aware of her life experience and the confidence it brings. She feels the tension of his youthful sincerity, the intensity of his emotional openness, and simultaneously wonders whether she can allow herself to respond. There is curiosity mingled with caution, an unspoken understanding that emotional proximity doesn't come without risk. Small, almost accidental touches punctuate their interactions, a brief hand on his arm to emphasize a point, his hand brushing hers when passing a book, or a shared laugh that brings them physically closer in a moment of ease. These tiny gestures carry weight far beyond their physicality. They are the first language of intimacy, subtle yet undeniable. Even after parting, the impact of these brief encounters lingers. He finds himself replaying moments in his mind, the warmth of her smile, the faint scent of her perfume, the feel of her hand brushing against his. She carries similar recollections, a quiet awareness of the emotional current that flows between them, unspoken but undeniable. By the end of this keynote, the audience should feel the slow but undeniable pull between them, curiosity growing into emotional investment, hesitation battling desire, and an intimacy developing without any words explicitly stating it. This part cements the foundation of their connection, making the audience ache for the next step in their evolving story. At will shape the entire story. The quiet familiarity between them begins to take root, but with it comes a tension neither of them can easily name. Their encounters are no longer just accidental, they feel inevitable. Perhaps they meet at the same cafe again, or their conversations naturally drift to a shared corner of the park, but each moment is layered with hesitation, curiosity, and a subtle ache of longing. The narrator, mid-twenties, finds himself drawn not only to her grace and maturity but also to the quiet vulnerability she keeps tucked beneath the surface. It's during one of these encounters that she begins to reveal cracks in her armor. She might share a fleeting memory of a heartbreak, a professional disappointment, or a personal regret, just enough to hint at the depth of her experiences, but never the full story. Her voice carries a trace of wistfulness, almost like a delicate tremor, and the narrator notices it. He feels a protective, tender pull toward her, coupled with a growing admiration for the way she carries herself despite past pain. Physical closeness in these moments becomes almost natural, though still unspoken. Sitting on a park bench, her shoulder brushes against his. He notices the subtle warmth, the curve of her posture, as she shifts slightly toward him. At a cafe, their knees might touch under the table, a seemingly accidental intimacy that leaves his heart racing. Even small gestures, a fleeting hand on her arm to emphasize a point, the brush of her fingers over a book, become moments of quiet electricity. Emotionally, both are caught in conflict. He is drawn to her wisdom, her quiet confidence, and yet acutely aware of their age gap. He wonders whether she sees him as merely a younger observer or as someone capable of understanding her world. She, in turn, feels the stirrings of attraction and curiosity but struggles with hesitation. There is a subtle dance of restraint, leaning in just enough to signal interest, then stepping back to maintain control. The narrative should highlight the silent tension in their interactions. Long pauses speak louder than words, the space where they hesitate before responding, the lingering glances that communicate more than dialogue ever could. Their emotions are unspoken but tangible, conveyed through body language, the way her fingers linger on a coffee cup, the way he unconsciously mirrors her posture, the small adjustments that bring them physically closer even as uncertainty hovers. Moments of vulnerability are paired with sensory details to immerse the audience. The warmth of sunlight falling across her face, the faint scent of her perfume, the soft rustle of her clothes as she shifts, these create a palpable, intimate atmosphere. The narrator notices these subtleties and stores them in memory, each one deepening his emotional attachment. By the end of this part, the audience should feel the weight of their emotional push and pull. They are connected in a way that is tender, fragile, and charged with possibility. The tension is real, each wants closeness but fears its consequences. This stage establishes the emotional stakes for the story, setting the stage for the inevitable moment when vulnerability will challenge their restraint and push their connection into deeper territory. By now, the subtle closeness they've built over days and weeks has deepened, yet it carries an almost unbearable weight. The narrator, mid-twenties, feels as though every moment near her is charged, each glance and brush of hands echoing louder than words. She, in her early 40s, senses the same tension, a magnetic pull she wants to resist but cannot fully ignore. Their connection is intoxicating, but the age gap, past heartbreaks, and fear of vulnerability create a quiet friction, a tension that both excites and frightens them. The story reaches its emotional apex when she, overwhelmed by her own insecurities, retreats in a moment of self-protection. Perhaps a conversation veers too close to personal history, or he expresses concern for her in a way that unintentionally touches on old wounds. She flinches, not visibly, but in the subtle stiffening of her posture, the brief hesitation in her voice. He notices immediately the slight downturn of her eyes, the tense set of her shoulders, the faint tightening of her fingers around a cup or book. These small, almost invisible signs hit him harder than any words could. The narrator's internal world cracks open here. He feels exposed, almost betrayed, not in anger, but in the sense that the emotional intimacy he's offered so freely has met a wall. His chest tightens, his heartbeat quickens, and a strange ache spreads across his ribs. It's the realization that the person he admires and quietly adores is also capable of inflicting an unintentional but profound emotional wound. He cannot speak, cannot bridge the moment with casual conversation. The air between them is thick, almost tangible, laden with the weight of unspoken feelings. Physical closeness becomes a study in restraint and longing. They might be seated near each other on a park bench, in a car after a shared errand, or in a quiet room with the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. Their shoulders nearly touch, hands linger near each other, yet no direct contact is made. Every small movement, her turning slightly away, his fingers brushing against his notebook nervously, is magnified in emotional significance. Sensory details heighten the intensity. He notices the faint warmth radiating from her coat, the subtle scent of her perfume mingling with the crisp air, the soft rustle of her hair as it falls over her shoulder. The ambient sounds, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional bird call, the clink of a coffee cup, fade into background noise, leaving only the emotional current between them. The audience should feel the sharp, poignant ache of this moment. It is not a melodramatic confrontation but a delicate, emotionally resonant rupture, a point where attraction, admiration, and fear collide. Their connection is undeniable, yet it feels as fragile as glass. This part of the story is the peak of tension, the moment when emotional stakes are at their highest, when the risk of vulnerability feels almost unbearable, and when their unspoken desires and hesitations threaten to tear the fragile bond they've built. By the end of this keynote, viewers are left with a mixture of anticipation and empathy, anticipation for whether they can bridge this chasm, and empathy for the raw, human complexity of their emotions. The scene lays the groundwork for confession, reconciliation, and deeper intimacy in the next part of the story. The tension from the previous encounter lingers, like the echo of a song you can't forget. After days of reflection and quiet longing, the narrator finally finds himself in a moment where honesty is no longer optional. Perhaps it is during a rainy evening at a small cafe, the kind of place where the soft patter of rain against the windows and the low hum of conversations create a cocoon of intimacy. Or maybe it is in the quiet of a library corner, the scent of old books thick in the air, where they can speak without distraction. Whatever the setting, it is private, safe, and insulated from the world, a space where vulnerability can exist without judgment. She is there first, her presence calm but guarded. She avoids eye contact at first, fingers playing nervously with the edge of a cup or the strap of her bag. He notices the subtle tremor in her voice, the slight tension in her shoulders, and it makes him ache in a way he cannot quite articulate. She begins to speak, admitting something she has long kept hidden, a mistake, a lapse of judgment, a past hurt that made her retreat from intimacy. Her words are soft, weighted with self-reproach, but she meets his gaze just long enough to convey a quiet plea, for understanding, for acceptance. He listens intently, feeling the raw sincerity behind each confession. And then, in a rare moment of openness, he shares his own vulnerability, the way her earlier hesitation broke a part of him he thought unshakable, the ache of wanting someone who pulls away, and the hope that despite her fear, a connection might still be possible. His voice is measured, yet each word carries emotional gravity. The confessions are not dramatic or overblown, they are human, tender, and unvarnished, exposing two hearts navigating the precarious territory of desire, fear, and respect. Physical closeness mirrors this emotional intimacy. He reaches out instinctively, placing a hand on her shoulder for a brief moment, not to comfort, but to acknowledge the weight of her confession. She allows it, leaning slightly into the touch, and it feels like an unspoken promise, the first real connection that is entirely theirs. Later, perhaps they sit closer than before, knees almost touching, hands resting near each other, fingers brushing occasionally in accidental yet meaningful contact. Every touch is amplified, every gesture a statement of trust and tentative affection. Sensory detail enriches the moment. The warmth of a shared blanket or sweater, the subtle scent of her perfume mingling with the faint aroma of coffee, the gentle hum of rain or city life outside, all heighten the intimacy. Their eyes meet frequently, sometimes speaking more than their words ever could, each glance a question, an answer, or a confession in itself. Silence is not awkward here. It is the punctuation between truths shared, the quiet gravity of mutual understanding. By the end of this scene, their emotional walls have begun to crumble. There is no full resolution yet, but there is a new understanding, a fragile, precious acknowledgement of each other's humanity, desire, and hesitancy. The audience should feel the tension soften slightly, replaced by a profound emotional resonance, a sense of safety, and the first real step toward emotional and physical intimacy that remains YouTube safe. Hand touches, leaning in, lingering glances, and shared space that feels private and sacred. This is the turning point, the moment where connection deepens from curiosity and tension to genuine, heartfelt recognition of each other's inner worlds. After the emotional confessions of the previous part, a subtle shift occurs between them. The air of tension that once defined their interaction softens, replaced by a quiet warmth of familiarity and trust. The narrator, in his mid-20s, now perceives her not as an untouchable figure of grace but as a person, complex, tender, and achingly human. She, in her early 40s, senses that he is more than just youthful curiosity. He is attentive, empathetic, and sincere, capable of holding her vulnerability without judgment. They meet again in a familiar setting, a small park with sun-dappled benches, a quiet cafe with low music, or perhaps a cozy living room during an afternoon of shared work or conversation. This time, the tension is replaced by anticipation, and eager curiosity tempered with comfort. Their dialogue flows more naturally, with laughter spilling over gentle pauses, and silences that no longer feel fraught but serene. Every glance, every subtle movement conveys reassurance and shared understanding. Physical gestures now carry intent, though still restrained and YouTube safe. He holds the door for her with a soft smile, and she lets her hand brush briefly against his arm, a deliberate, meaningful touch that speaks volumes about trust and growing intimacy. Sitting side by side, their shoulders naturally graze, their proximity no longer accidental but welcomed. She leans slightly toward him when sharing a story. He mirrors her posture unconsciously, signaling emotional alignment without a single word. These small acts become a language of closeness, nuanced and tender. Emotionally, hesitation continues to play a quiet role. She is still aware of the potential consequences of opening fully to someone younger, of the risks inherent in vulnerability. He, too, is mindful of not overwhelming her, of respecting the pace of their evolving connection. Yet the walls they have held around their hearts begin to crumble, not through dramatic declarations, but in subtle, everyday moments, a shared laugh, a pause in conversation filled with mutual acknowledgement, the comfortable silence of simply existing together. The sensory world enhances their connection. The faint scent of her perfume mingles with the earthy aroma of rain-soaked streets outside the window. The warmth of sunlight on their skin, the soft rustle of clothing as they shift closer, the quiet cadence of each other's breathing, all create a cocoon of intimacy that is felt rather than spoken. Even the smallest gestures, the touch of a hand on a cup, the brush of a finger across a notebook, carry significance, a tactile punctuation to their growing emotional bond. By the end of this part, the audience should sense a profound evolution. Two individuals who began with cautious curiosity now share a tentative yet meaningful trust. Their emotional and physical proximity signals a mutual willingness to explore closeness while honoring each other's boundaries. The stage is set for resolution, whether romantic, emotionally intimate, or bittersweet, yet the journey itself is as compelling as any conclusion. This is the calm after the storm of tension, a slow, steady build of understanding and emotional alignment that prepares the viewer for the final moments of confession, affirmation, and resolution. Their connection is no longer tentative, it is intentional, heartfelt, and filled with the quiet promise of something lasting. After weeks of subtle glances, shared silences, and quiet tension, the story reaches its emotional resolution. By now, the narrator, in his mid-20s, and the woman, in her early 40s, have navigated hesitation, vulnerability, and the fragile complexities of an age-gap connection. The previous moments of tension, confession, and mutual understanding have laid a foundation of trust and emotional intimacy that is palpable, even without dramatic gestures. The setting reflects this intimacy, a quiet evening at the same park where they have walked together before, the dim glow of streetlights illuminating their faces, or perhaps a warm, softly lit cafe, with the comforting aroma of coffee and baked goods surrounding them. The world outside fades into the background, leaving only the two of them, emotionally aligned yet still human in their hesitations and vulnerabilities. This moment is less about words and more about presence. They sit side by side, close enough that their knees touch, the small warmth of proximity grounding them in a shared reality. Their hands brush, once, twice, and finally linger together, a deliberate, conscious connection that feels both safe and significant. He notices the gentle rise and fall of her breath, the subtle expression in her eyes that speaks of trust, relief, and quiet affection. She, in turn, senses the steady sincerity in his gaze, the unspoken promise of care and understanding. The conversation is honest, reflective, and tender. They speak of fears, past regrets, and the journey that has brought them here. She admits her lingering self-doubt, acknowledging how fear had once held her back. He, in response, shares his admiration for her strength and vulnerability, expressing how she has left an indelible mark on him. These confessions are not grandiose but intimate, grounded in human emotion and mutual respect. Physical affection remains subtle yet meaningful, staying within YouTube's safe boundaries. A hand rests briefly on her shoulder, a comforting and deliberate gesture, a soft touch of fingers intertwines, a lingering cheek-to-cheek brush, a quiet hug that seems to hold the weight of unspoken promises. Every movement communicates affection and emotional resonance, a testament to the depth of their connection. By the end of this part, the resolution can take several forms, depending on the emotional arc desired. Together and secure, they openly acknowledge their feelings, the age gap now irrelevant in the face of mutual respect and love. The story closes with a warm embrace, lingering handhold, or gentle kiss on the cheek, a visual and emotional confirmation of commitment. Together but uncertain, they admit their feelings but leave the future open, a quiet acknowledgement of connection that allows for exploration without pressure. Emotional resolution without romance. Circumstances prevent a romantic union, but they part as close friends or mentors, each carrying the impact of the bond and lessons learned. Separation with lasting impact. Life pulls them apart, yet the emotional imprint remains, shaping their futures and leaving viewers with a bittersweet resonance. Sensory details enhance the scene, the warmth of shared space, the faint scent of her perfume lingering, the softness of his sweater as their arms brush, the quiet rhythm of breathing in the calm evening. Every detail amplifies the emotional weight of closure. This final chapter delivers fulfillment to the audience. The journey from curiosity and hesitation to vulnerability, trust, and intimate understanding reaches its conclusion, leaving viewers emotionally satisfied, reflective, and touched by the subtle power of human connection. It is a quiet, tender finale that resonates long after the story ends.